You know, I was kind of lost, and my dad told me the first thing, he's like, you know, stop thinking so much, and he put me to work in the garden, tilling the garden. And once I got busy in the garden, everything else kind of just, you know, floated away. You know, when you're on a, even when you're just mowing the lawn, you're sitting on the lawnmower, driving in a straight line, you know, you kind of blur everything else out and just think about what you're doing. So like that's when I knew, I was like, oh, I need to do this more often. So whenever I met my wife, we got our first apartment. We're on the 3rd floor balcony, and we were lugging up 40-pound bags of soil onto our balcony, trying to figure out ways to water our garden from the kitchen faucet. We even put a quick connect adapter to a shrinking hose so that we could run the water hose out to the balcony of our apartment. We had tomato. Okay, I don't care what it looks like, where it's at. I just want a big backyard so I can do whatever I want. I kind of got half that. Like Michael was saying, I got a 1/16 of an acre. So I think my backyard's a 32nd of an acre. And it went from, you know, growing stuff in 5-gallon buckets to raised beds to greenhouses and everything in between. I usually do a presentation, but I actually forgot my laptop at home. But I've done it so many times, I can kind of just go through it. And honestly, I'd rather just do a Q&A and talk to y'all and interact. I know up here in Wichita Falls, y'all are in zone 7B, 8A, depending on which part of Wichita Falls you're in. I'm in zone 9B, so I'm a little more privileged. I got a lot more wild tropical stuff down there, but I'll be happy to answer any gardening questions, talk about anything. Y'all just raise your hand and we can talk about it. I know a lot of people are growing tomatoes right now. Anyone having issues with their tomatoes? I know a lady was talking about earlier not getting a lot of great pollination. The one thing I always like to do is, you know, it's not really by choice, it's a space issue, is that all my tomatoes are pretty close by. And I've probably got upwards of 100 tomato plants in my backyard right now. And having more sometimes helps out pollination, because not only are they going to pollinate each other, but you're going to bring in more pollinators. So that really helps. So even with squash, you know, people will have squash and the male flowers come out and they just fall off. You know, or the female squash puts out a little squash and it falls off. It's usually a pollination issue. So like I always at least plant 6 squash just to increase the pollination rates and get a better, you know, production out of my squash and everything. But is anyone having issues with their garden right now? Has it been pretty nice up here? Mild spring for the most part? Wet? Wet's a good thing, right? Sometimes. Yeah, it's been a very mild spring down in Houston as well, which has kind of been nice, but we haven't gotten tomato production that we, you know, usually get this time of year. But, you know, I can't really complain because it's been wet and cool and I'm not sweating and dying outside yet. So, but I know a lot of people are, you know, getting their tomatoes. Is there, who here gardens? Who here has like a vegetable garden? Yep. What about, who here does raised beds? Who has raised bed gardens? Who has container gardens? Michael just has his hand up the entire time back there. Yeah, I actually don't do any in-ground gardening. All my gardening, not only is it because, you know, I hate bending over, but also, you know, my entire when I first moved into my backyard, I called 811, which you should always do before you dig anything in any backyard or anywhere, is call 811. They'll come out for free and they'll mark up your backyard and show you where all the utility lines are everywhere. And so I knew there was lines going through my yard, but I didn't know how many. They came out, and when the guy was done, you know that old screensaver where it had all the pipes, the different colors going like this? That's what my backyard looked like. And you know, I even still, after he did that, I dug and I still hit another line. So that was fun. So everything in my backyard is in raised beds or containers. Not only because of the ease of bending over and moving stuff around, but also people don't realize how hard it is to manipulate the soil in the ground, how much money, how much time and effort it takes to, you know, amend your soil to get it ready for vegetable gardening or anything really. And doing stuff in containers and bringing in soil has been so much more effective for me, especially on a smaller scale. I'm not growing 1,000 tomato plants. I'm maybe growing 50 to 100, but raised bed and container gardening has been nice for that. Anybody growing peppers this year? Who's growing peppers?
Peppers.
I will recommend. I don't eat them because I am a wuss when it comes to spicy stuff. Michael has a very hot pepper that him and my wife were eating. So I think what was it called again, Michael? What he said. Yeah. It's a Peruvian pepper. So definitely check that one out. He says he's got a bunch of them. So I think you're going to give them away, right? Yeah.
But you have to eat some first.
I'm not doing it. I'm not trying to ruin my entire trip. I actually, we did a challenge on our podcast that if we've gotten the top 10? The top 10 on the rankings that I would actually eat a habanero.
All three of us agree.
Yeah, we'll do it together. Yeah.
Not live though.
No, not live. It'll ruin the entire podcast. I can't do that. But yeah, it's been a kind of a weird year for the heat hasn't really hit in, but my pepper harvest has been insane. This year is the first year I usually do all my gardening, my seed starting, and it's seed starting blocks. But this year I did something different where I tried soil blocking for the first time. I'd always seen videos and people's doing soil blocking, and what it is where you take your potting soil, your seed starting mix, and you compress it into a cube, and then you plant your seed into the cube and allow it to grow like that. I got so cough in my throat. Sorry. All the pollinators. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the peppers. Even though it hasn't been that hot, it's been a great harvest for peppers so far this spring. Been harvesting a lot of really spicy ones like the habaneros and the Colossus jalapenos that are perfect for like stuffing cream cheese and wrapping with bacon. Those are, oh my God, I'm choking again. Oh my God. Yeah, we've done the Anaheims and the Santa Fe Grandes. Those are some of our favorites. We're actually doing a lot of hot poblanos this year, which are big poblano peppers that we really like. Most of our peppers go into a dehydrator, and we dehydrate them, grind them up, and turn them into pepper powder that my insane in-laws love. They like really spicy, so I can't do it. Yeah, my wife is a spicy person. I'm not a spicy person at all, but. I actually, Farmer Froberg came over to my house and I was dehydrating a bunch of peppers one time, and I was sitting on the couch when he knocked on the door and said, "Come on in." And as soon as he took 2 steps into my house, he goes, "Dude." I'm like, "What?" He said, "It feels like I just got maced." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Are you dehydrating peppers or something?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh my God." And I didn't even realize my eyes were bloodshot, and like, he's like, "Yeah, dude, you can't do that in the house." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I won't do it again." But I think the smell was in our house for like a month after that. It was so crazy. I'm like, I'm choking up here, I think.
Don't die.
Oh my God. Ugh, sorry about that.
Outside of the building.
Oh my God. Like I said, if you're tired of me ranting, just raise your hand and I'll answer some gardening questions. Yes, ma'am.
What plants are good pollinators to bring in the bees to pollinate everything else in your yard?
Yeah, so that's a great question. She's asking about what are some good pollinators. I have in the last couple of years, not only because the native plant people online are insane, but because it's just easier. It's easier to grow a lot of native flowering plants, especially in like up here where y'all get crazy weather, hailstorms, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Houston is the same. Oh my God, I'm dying.
He gets some bread or something.
Is there something floating in the air? Like, oh my God. Dude, I don't know.
You want a hot dog?
I don't think a hot dog's. I think choking on a hot dog on stage would probably be worse than what I'm doing right now. But yeah, no, sorry. Des is going to do a whole talk on native pollinators, and you can. I think we were talking with Michael. He's going to do like a little area where he organizes all the native stuff, so you can see like what is native in y'all's area. The funny thing about like Texas and native plants is there's so many regions. They're like at Tacoma Sands and Esperanza. It's a native Texas plant. Is it native to Wichita Falls? No. So like Texas is such a big state. It can be a Texas native down in like El Paso, but is it up in Houston? Probably not. But going with Texas native plants has been my biggest thing I've been doing, and it's increased a lot of the pollination in my garden. My wife, we have a whole Vigo bed where it's just native plants, and we had 5 inches of snow last year, and like hardly any of them didn't come back. Like it's been crazy. What's that? I don't think I should have piece of gum. Oh my God. But yeah, no, we also do a lot of hibiscuses Even my plumerias and desert roses and stuff like that. We do in my backyard. Usually, if it doesn't flower or if it doesn't produce fruit, I typically don't have. I don't even like grass that much. But definitely going with natives is a great way to go. And usually they'll either say like Texas native on the tag, or in the nursery it'll have like a designator saying native Texas stuff. Like Michael was talking about earlier, people are kind of going away from more annual stuff. Even in the front flower bed, we're pulling out our shrubs and doing like Texas sage, because you can plant a Texas sage and bees are always on Texas. Like
Well, I don't mind the bees. It's the wasp and hornets I don't want.
yeah.
They're good pollinators though.
I know.
Yeah, I was actually talking about this earlier. I know exactly where some wasp nests are in my yard, and I haven't gone after them. I kind of been leaving them alone because in my entire time of gardening, I have not been stung by a wasp once.
I have.
But I have seen them eat a lot of pests. Not only do they have to go after scale and like everything. I was on a live on TikTok one time, and I was over by my dill area, and I was showing off all the swallowtail butterfly caterpillars, and they're beautiful. And then out of nowhere comes this red wasp, and it lands in the dill, and it jabs the caterpillar in the stomach and bleeds it out and carries it off. And then proceeds to come back and kill every single caterpillar on the dill plant. And I was live on TikTok. I was like, this is like brutal to watch. It was rough, but like so if you have caterpillars, wasps will take care of those. So I leave the wasps alone for the most part, but they don't bother me. We actually have bees, and our neighbor has bees in the side of his house. That when we were first moving in, the DirecTV guy came over, and he was installing the dish on top of my house. And I don't know how he had my number, but he texted me a picture, and the whole side of my neighbor's house, like 4 foot long by 2 foot wide, was just a giant like swarm of bees. And the hardy plank on the second story below the first story was brick, had slid down, and all those bees went into that guy's house. And so I went next door and I was like, showed the neighbor the picture, and I was like, hey, you got bees in your house now? And he was like, what do you want me to do about it? And I was like, I don't know, man. I'm telling you about this. And he's like, well, I'm not going to pay to have them removed. And we reached out to some beekeepers, and I guess like 90% of the time when they remove bees, they have to be euthanized. It's hard for them to rehome them, or I don't know. But also, that person has to agree to pay for all the damage that's done in the process of that. So they didn't want to do it. So we just decided to plant our cucumbers over there, and we had the best cucumber crop. The craziest thing was that bees are, they when the hive gets too big, they swarm. They'll designate another queen, she'll leave, and then they're going to try to find her. And I was always scared they're going to go into our house and create a hive in there. But usually it looked like a tornado of bees in our backyard. You'd be out there, they wouldn't be aggressive, but they would be like the craziest thing you ever seen. Just like a tornado of bees, and they're not stinging you. I've been stung once. My dog gets stung all the time because he's an idiot. My dog loves to kill bees, and they must taste sweet. They must taste sweet or something. My dad says the same thing. My dad's a beekeeper now, and he says possums will come up to a beehive, and they don't even eat the bees. They get them and they mash them up in their mouth. And I don't know, they must taste sweet or something. But everything likes to eat bees apparently though. So.
You have any recommendations to keep mosquitoes away?
I was using a product called Mosquito Beater last year. They make a hose end attachment to go like on your hose, or they make a granule that kind of smells like dill. Yeah, it's safe for like pets and stuff. But this year I just ordered them, the little canisters that y'all have, the Spartan things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the little canisters that hang from the.
Yeah, go ask inside.
Yeah, little red tubes. Yeah, I think like
For several years, we use them around here.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah, I'm always looking to try something new because my wife will get bit by a mosquito and 5 inches of snow in February. They don't bother me much, but if I want her to pull weeds, I got to take care of the mosquitoes.
I don't want to go in my backyard if I'm going to get attacked.
Do they get pretty bad up here? They get pretty bad up here? Yeah. The state bird of Texas? Yeah. No, a lot of people will, put out certain plants like citronella, basil. A lot of fragrant plants will, be deterrents of mosquitoes, but nothing is better than off. or using like something like that. But if you can keep them alive, like citronella does help deter them, I guess. Marigolds apparently are deterrent too. So, but yeah, mosquitoes are a fact of life. It's like fire ants. That's probably the most common question I get in my DMs is, how do I get rid of ants in my raised bed? And I tell them, you don't, because it's like taxes. You're always going to be there. But we were even talking about this yesterday at lunch that, there's a lot of cool benefits of ants that, not much fun, but like they, if you've ever had a raised bed, like I've had some raised beds with a bunch of mulch and stuff in there, and you go and every time I pull out everything out of my greenhouse, everything is covered in baby lizards and the pot is full of ants. And so I usually have to do like an orange oil drench in some of my pots and stuff, or spray the plant with it, because that's one thing you can do. It's organic, but it's going to kill everything in the pot. D-limonene is in the orange oil, and it's an asphyxiant, so it kills ants, but it'll kill worms and all that stuff too. But the soil after you get rid of the ants is like so silky and smooth. It's really nice. They really do a lot of good stuff as far as like working the soil and turning it into something. Even the roly-polies, y'all bad roly-polies up here too?
Yeah.
I don't know what is it. I don't know if we just started noticing it. Like the last couple of years, the roly-polies have just been crazy, and they don't do a whole lot of damage except for like baby little tender plants that are just popping up. They will nibble on that, but like I've had some people like they've eaten half a cucumber. It's crazy. But every time I open up my my compost bed, it's just full of roly-polies. But they do a lot of work. They're dinosaurs. They're eating everything that's edible. So they're nature's little cleanup crews. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a detailed instructions on how to do a raised garden bed? We did ours this year and it's thriving.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of work.
Yeah, it's she's asking if I have like a detailed like instructional guide on raised beds. So I have a lot of like videos on YouTube and stuff how I do mine. But
You're in South Texas.
right, well I'm in Houston, so like everybody's situation is gonna be different. From my house on one end of the block to the other guys on the other end of the block, it's gonna be different, So you can use the stuff I use, but make it work for you. So like one thing I always say about raised beds is I don't make them any shallower than like 6 inches.
Right.
A foot. I wouldn't want a 6-inch raised bed just because it's especially if you're gonna do root vegetables, it's hard to get stuff to go deep. So I recommend at least 12-inch deep raised beds. And then I don't use potting soil. I don't use potting soil in my raised bed gardens. I use a combination of mulch and compost. I maybe do like, if it's a foot deep, I'll do 4 inches the bottom with just mulch or something. Yeah. And I for a long time I used to use a lot of weed liner under my beds. And if you ever use weed liner in like your mulch or your rock, spaces, the weeds are going to come over the bed. Like I used to wonder, like, how is this weed coming up? And it's like, oh, it's because every time I weed eat, I'm throwing seeds into my rocks. Like the liners will maybe help a little bit, but they don't. The actual fact of putting the mulch and the soil on top, I don't even remove the grass when I put a raised bed in. I just literally just put the mulch and the compost, and I feel like the act of it smothering out the grass itself sustains it. But if you raise bed garden, you're constantly adding new soil every year. So like as much as it rains and much as we water in Houston, after you fill up a raised bed garden for the first time, if it's 12 inches deep, after 3-4 months, it's sunk down to 8 inches. So every time you go, top it off, what I like to do is put a layer of cardboard. I put
We put a tarp down on top and then built from there. Just it is truly raised, way up. How do you keep the soil until next year?
Yeah, I get questions about that too. Like, do I reuse the soil? I don't do any tilling. I did just recently, early this spring, learn about broadforking, which is it's called broadforking. It's basically like, if you have like a pitchfork, you take it and you loop, because when you're gardening in a raised bed, your soil starts to get compacted. It starts to get real compacted. That's how you see that sinkage. So whenever you go through and broadfork or pitchfork your soil in the bed, it's going to aerate that soil without disturbing it too much. Like instead of tilling it, I do a lot of that. And so I noticed I had the best carrot harvest I've ever had. I've never had any luck with carrots before until I broadforked and I loosened up and aerated that soil, because you're allowing for better drainage and better, just better bioactivity. I'm not a scientist. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all he isn't even saying anything else. He said I'm right.
Winter and stuff, what can we do to keep it from, I guess, drying out too much? I mean, is there...
I have a small yard, so all my beds are occupied all the time. So
our bed isn't much bigger than a table.
Yeah.
And I want to keep it next year as well.
Right. So some people will take one thing, like if you're in a city, is if you have an empty bed, it's an attractant for stray cats to poop in your raised bed. So if you're not using your raised bed, put something on it so that the cats won't poop in it. But you can put a silage tarp, or you can put a tarp on it, or you can just mulch it. But I typically am adding soil all the time and regrowing. Like as soon as one crop goes out, one goes in. So like right now, all my beds, I have carrots I just harvested. I'm about to put peppers in there. Once the peppers are done, I'll be putting in cabbage, kale, all that stuff. But I'll pull all that stuff out, top it, and then add the next crop. So my beds don't stay empty very long, like at all. But yeah, no, it's great. Hey, we all started off as beginners, and we all kill plants. We're all gonna kill plants. If you garden, you're gonna kill plants. Michael's killed millions and millions of plants in his life. Got any questions? Anything?
Do you ever turn your raised beds into like greenhouses? And if you do, how do you do that?
She was asking about turning a raised bed into a greenhouse. I have a greenhouse, or I have a raised bed in my greenhouse, but I don't necessarily turn them into a greenhouse, but I did use low tunnel hoops whenever we had 5 inches of snow in Houston. And I did an experiment. We had onions. We planted onions and garlic in like October, and we're like, okay, we're gonna grow them all winter long. I still haven't grown. I forgot how long onions and garlic take to grow. They take a long time. But the beds that I didn't cover with the frost cloth, I had the worst success with the garlic and the onions. I thought they were gonna. Everybody says, oh, garlic and onions, they're cold tolerant. When they have 5 inches of snow, it melts and then it freezes again. That's what killed them. Even my dill was alive during that first snow. The dill looked fantastic. Then it melted all day and refroze, and that's what killed it. So most of my stuff, like the cabbage and kale and stuff, you don't really need a greenhouse for on the raised beds. That stuff is going to be great. Anything like kale. If who here likes kale? Who likes the flavor of kale? Who absolutely hates the flavor of kale? Yeah, you probably had it grown in like late spring, summer, because when kale is grown over winter, the freezing temperatures turn the starch molecules into sugar molecules. And I think when we had the ice storm, went out there, I was picking kale, and ice off of it. It was the sweetest kale I ever had in my life. So that's like one of the only things I can even grow over winter time is kale, cabbages. Down in Houston, it doesn't stay cold very long, so I've got to grow all my leafy greens over winter. So she was asking about like tomato fertilization. So I do a monthly granular fertilizer, and like I said, I use Nelson plant food, tomato food, but you can use any vegetable food. But just read the directions. I always tell people now, especially because I work for the company, I say make sure you follow the instructions at the back of the bottle. But then I also will do maybe a monthly to every 2 weeks foliar feed, and that's when I will do my neem oil application for like vine borers and aphids. I use cold pressed neem oil, and it helps out with like aphids and stuff like that. I will mix in my liquid fertilizer, and I'll wait till it's really late in the evening. So if the sun's going down at 7:30, I'm spraying at like 7:20 to avoid pollinators and beneficial insects and stuff like that. And I'm getting a low dose of liquid fertilizer to mine as well. So places like here at Michael's, at Smith's Garden Town, they will be liquid feeding every time they water. So stuff like strawberries, they say, if at home, liquid fertilize them every time you water them. I'm having the craziest success with strawberry plants right now. Usually by this time, My strawberry plants are completely dried out and dead. But my friend Froberg down here in Alvin, he called me one day and was like, hey, you want some strawberry plants? And I was like, it's October. It's like 90 degrees outside here in Houston. He's like, yeah, that's when we plant our strawberries. And I was like, really? I was like, he goes, yeah, that's why they grow all winter long. Strawberries are cold tolerant. They only take damage if you get a freeze. They'll drop their blooms or their fruit. So I grew my strawberries since October, and they're still growing in a bed that's almost like full shade. And we're still picking strawberries out here in June. Like, it's the craziest. In Houston, by mid-May, early May, they're usually dead. It's too hot for them. They just dry out so fast. But yeah, once a month is usually what I do with the fertilizer I use, and then liquid feed probably once or twice a month too. So, yeah.
I have a question for you. Are ladybugs good pollinators? Do they pollinate stuff or not so much?
So that's a good question. He's asking about ladybugs, if they're pollinating. I guess like I don't know that ladybugs would be classified as a pollinator, but the same thing like with ants. Like, ants go in and out of the bloom, and they go from bloom to bloom. Ladybugs do fly, so I guess technically, no.
They're an incidental pollinator.
Yeah.
If they do pollinate anything at all, it's because they accidentally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they bump their butt on something on the way out, and just coincidentally, but no, ladybugs are great. And fun fact, not all ladybugs are ladies. I didn't know that. If you're gonna, I did a couple videos back in the day when I was first starting out, and I found out you could buy ladybugs online. And never in a million years did I get more ugly comments on a video than I did on that one. I got the meanest comments on that video. Well, I won't get into it, but but if you're gonna buy beneficial insects like for your garden, the green lacewings are actually better.
The what?
They call them green lacewings. Because the problem is when you buy ladybugs, they're typically already full grown, and so you release them and they fly away. If you could buy ladybug eggs and let them loose, their larvae would eat the aphids and hang around a little bit. With the green lacewings, you can buy the eggs, and the eggs will hatch and they'll eat aphids and then they'll fly away. So yeah, but ladybugs, it's fun though with kids. They do bite. I got bit right on the chest by a ladybug. I had 6,000 ladybugs all over me. It was scary. It did bite me. Yeah. Questions? Everyone back there? Questions? No? Okay. Well, how much more time do I have, Miles? Like an hour?
No, the next talk is until 2:15, but
Okay.
2:30.
Yeah.
But we can break. We can mingle. We can do.
Y'all go take a bathroom break and get a hot dog, and if you have some questions, come by my booth, and I've got stickers to give away and all kinds of good stuff. But yeah, come holler at me over there, and we'll chit chat.
Go ladybug.